So every once in a while, I will see a checklist floating around of like what order you should be reading Tolkien. And the first thing I want to say is that you can read Tolkien in any order that you want. Some things will make it easier for you to understand the story, but I don't want anyone to feel like they are stuck or beholden to any reading list, not mine, not anyone else's. However, if you do want my reading list, my reading order, this is what I would recommend. I would start out with The Hobbit, and then I would read on fairy stories. Why would you read on fairy stories before The Lord of the Rings, you ask? On Fairy Stories opens like a secret door that you didn't even know existed into Tolkien's mind and his motivations, his perspective on storytelling, his understanding of myth. And it gives you this like hidden glimpse into the way that he built Middle-earth, and it helps you to really understand like his perspective and his purpose for writing myth. And it also introduces the idea of eucatastrophe. Eucatastrophe is like fundamental. It's a really big thing for Tolkien. Next is a poem called Mythopoeia. And in this poem, Tolkien talks about something that he calls the true myth. Then we pop into The Lord of the Rings. So you go The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King. After you finish The Lord of the Rings, I would suggest Leaf by Niggle. Leaf by Niggle is very short. It's another one of those things, kind of like on fairy stories, that it really gives you kind of like an insider's look into the way that Tolkien approached storytelling. After that, I would then move into The Silmarillion. The Silmarillion is very challenging. A lot of people get discouraged. And so I think if you build this foundation of Tolkienian reading before you get to the Silmarillion, I think you'll be like really solid. Then recommend the story of Kullervo, because this is a really interesting story. It's both the seed of the tale of Turin Turambar, but it's also Tolkien's sort of fan fiction of the Kalevala. And so it kind of shows you the way that Tolkien is like bridging different mythology over history. So mythology just continues to evolve, and Tolkien is playing a part in it. After that, I would then read The Fall of Numenor. This is a recent book edited by Brian Sibley, and it is so cool. It basically details everything that happens in the Second Age from the very beginning to the very end. And then I would move on to Unfinished Tales and The Nature of Middle-earth. After this, if you're still like, oh my gosh, I need to keep reading Tolkien, I've read, thousands of pages, but you still want more, I would then recommend something really, really fun, and it is Morgoth's Ring, volume 10 of the History of Middle-earth. And I'm getting really excited because this is such a fun book. So Morgoth's Ring has some really cool stuff about Sauron, and I find Sauron extremely interesting. There's also a really cool section called The Athrobeth Finrod a Andreth. And in this section, you really get into like this metaphysical debate between an elf and a human woman about hope and death and fate. There's also like a lot of religious themes at play. You can kind of see Tolkien trying to work out the religious metaphysics of Middle-earth. So it's really fun. After Morgoth's Ring, then I would go to the letters of J.R.R. Tolkien. There's like more than 300 of them, and it's not always something I would just like sit and read through. However, if you do, it's kind of cool because it's almost like you're reading an autobiography, because you start when he's quite young, and then obviously the letters go until he's very near to the end of his life. So it is really cool and insightful. I also just use these for reference a lot. After the letters of Tolkien, I would then read the Great Tales. So these were recently published within the last like 7 years. There's of Beren and Luthien, The Children of Húrin, and The Fall of Gondolin. And these are like expansions of the stories that are included in the Silmarillion, but there are all kinds of notes and different versions and drafts. And so if you're like, obviously if you've gotten to this point, you're a pretty big Tolkien nerd, so you'd probably find this really interesting. After you have finished all of that, if you're still wanting more Tolkien, I would then read the History of Middle-earth, just starting with volume 1 and then going all the way to 12. And probably by then, could just start back over with The Hobbit after that and just have a lifetime on a cycle of Tolkien for the whole rest of your life. So that is my recommended reading order. I think that it would give you a very comprehensive understanding of both Tolkien's Legendarium and his own perspective on storytelling and myth. Once again, these are just my recommendations. You know, a lot of people are like, I don't really like The Hobbit. It's kind of a children's story. That's fine. I would also say if you are reading Tolkien for the first time and you find a certain part boring, I give you full permission to skim through that section, because if you get to that point where you suddenly fall in love with The Lord of the Rings, you'll want to come back. You'll want to reread. You'll want to read things more in depth. So I would just say, enjoy yourself while you're reading. This isn't a competition. We're all here to have fun, and these stories can really change your life, honestly.